like the latter.
Yeah,
So,
I like that.
pressing start. And it says it's starting. Who knows if
Oh,
that's true?
there we
All
are.
right. It says that it is live. I'm not sure whether it's actually live.
Yeah,
Do you guys reckon that this is live and people can hear us right now?
it is live right now.
Absolutely.
It is live. All right. So we're just gonna go with it. We're testing out a new fancy setup here that I hope you guys like. I've got like little logos and things. It's taken me literally hours to figure out. And I think just earlier, some of you were on my sound check earlier as we were trying to get these pieces together. You guys tuned in for the sound check, and Jason Nelson actually says that's how you know you're loved, Naomi. We show up for a sound check. So I hope that was enjoyable for you all, but this will definitely be a lot more enjoyable for all of you. We are, of course, talking about all the latest news from the week, updating you on everything that's been going on in the world of crypto. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to the show Blakely Jones from Crypto Insider. This is his first time on my show. Welcome, Blakely.
Happy to be here and looking forward to having a good time.
Absolutely. And welcome back to the show, Chris Karabats, aka Zaphoid from Smart Cash.
Happy to be here, as usual.
Yeah. So I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Crypto Insider. I mentioned last week on the show that I'm starting a partnership with them for this weekly news recap. They're an awesome media outlet. If you haven't been checking out their stuff, make sure you do, because if you want to be staying on top of everything that's going on in crypto, then they're the place to go to. And we're sourcing a lot of our articles, so we're coming straight from the Crypto Insider page. So I'm going to be posting all of those in the link. Of course, we'll be discussing them on the show, but if you guys want to read up more about all of the things going on, then I have all of those links mentioned there for you, which is pretty cool. So thank you, Crypto Insider, for being part of this. It's pretty awesome.
We're happy to have you, that's for sure.
Yeah, happy to have you guys. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And so all these people are saying that they liked the live testing. I'm glad the live testing, Jan, wasn't our intent. Like, so you got to understand, I just want to give them a bit of context before we go into the news, because we do have a lot of news to cover, as always. So Chris and I think, did like 5 tests prior to that one. Is that right?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, about that.
Is it live? Can they see us? One, and then nothing happened, and then we'd be like, oh, so we just, be trash talking the program and all of this stuff, and then we try another one, we'd be like, is it live? So I think by the time we did this final one, we were like, all right, well, it's live again, Chris. Obviously no one could see us, and then all these people are tuning in and saying like, hey, how are you going? This is awesome. So that was pretty entertaining for us to suddenly see groups tuning in there. All right, so let's start off with a little bit of social media news. Now, we've been covering Lightning Torch and everything on the channel. We've been covering all of the buzz around that, and a lot of that stemming from Jack Dorsey. So he's like a big proponent. He's also an investor in Lightning Labs, and he's just gone full Bitcoin right now. So Twitter and Square CEO Jack Dorsey, bona fide Bitcoin advocate. Now, the latest news from this week is not that he's just tweeting about Lightning and, oh, this is cool and we're doing all this thing. He's now saying that he is buying $10,000 worth of Bitcoin every single week. So what do you guys think about that?
I'm pretty sure this would stop $10,000 off the sidewalk. So
wait, say that again. You cut out a little bit.
Of course I did. I'm pretty sure that Jack wouldn't stop to pick up $10,000 on the street with his net worth. So
that's probably accurate.
This is really more of a signaling thing than anything actually real. And he has been, signaling strong for Bitcoin in general and Lightning Network specifically for a while now. And this is just, I think, more of the same.
Oh yeah, no, and I absolutely agree. That was I remember this whole thing kind of coming to a head when he came on the Joe Rogan Experience, the podcast. Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's obvious, that we all agree that Jack Dorsey would not even bat an eye at spending $10,000 a week, let alone a day or how. I mean, he has so much money. The $10,000 is like a couple bucks to you and me, if even that. So, yeah, but definitely a signal, and I think that it's good for the market anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's like, it'd be like a supermodel saying, I have these shoes in my closet. And it's like, yeah, along with the 10,000 other brands of shoes you also have there. Like, it's so much. But at the same time, a lot of people who aren't really thinking in terms of that are probably looking at that saying, oh my gosh, signaling right there, $10,000 a week. That's huge. And so do you think that this is going to have like a dramatic effect on the market? Like, Jack has a huge following. He has huge outreach and exposure and all of that. I mean, he has one of the most famous, well-used platforms in the world. I mean, in fact, is Twitter the most used social media platform? I think it is, right?
Well, didn't they just have this week where they finally released some real usage numbers, and it was far worse than they were making everybody think for the last couple of years?
Well, I think that has been going down, and it could have something to do with them shadow banning like every second person or completely kicking people off
Yes.
platforms.
I've been
God
banned
for-
3 times. I've been suspended on my own account 3 times. They believe
What
I'm a
have
bot.
you done?
I've never even used the automation systems. Like the worst thing that I do is use RSS feed for like 3 times a day. The rest of it, they've probably taken 1,000 of my followers away. I'd get suspended, and then they'd take 300 followers, and they'd reactivate me, and then they'd suspend me, take away 300 followers, and they'd reactivate me, and it was always like 3 or 4 days of nonsense.
Suspend you and take away 300 followers?
It doesn't make any sense.
Punishment thing? Like,
No sense. It makes no sense to me. At one point, I was over, I think, 1,300, and they suspended me, and then I lost 300 followers. After it said I had 0 followers, and then it came up and gave me 1,000 instead of the 13 or 1,400. I can't explain it. Twitter's always a pain in my butt, but I love it. I love Twitter.
oh, no. Well,
Well,
people are saying that my
didn't they
microphone
just
is not
ban
working
the
too
Steemit
well.
accounts?
Hmm?
Didn't they just ban accounts last week?
I believe it. I haven't seen it, but I believe that.
Huh. Well, anyway, I mean, I just wonder whether this announcement has any effect on the market because he does have such a huge outreach, regardless of whether it's on their way down or the way up. So, I mean, we haven't really seen much movement there that would suggest that he's doing anything. But, I mean, these things could take a long time. Just having that become normalized in conversation. Oh, such and such CEO is getting involved. Such and such, it all kind of builds on it. Sometimes it takes usually the average consumer is not going to dive head first, say like, Jack is doing a thing, let me put 10,000 of my own dollars into it. I mean, they're going to wait and, maybe after hearing it a few times, start to go into this. So it would be interesting to see if this has an effect. And yeah, I haven't really seen it yet, but who knows?
I almost wonder if this is him, hello, fellow cool kids, I'm into the Bitcoin too, kind of thing.
I love that. I hope that's it.
But I just don't know because there's a lot going on with Twitter right now. There's a lot of drama in that area, and this could be him trying to deflect, or could be because they do own the Cash App too, and that is fairly popular among some of the Bitcoin people. So maybe this is legitimate and genuine, but it also doesn't make me love the Lightning Network more. So whatever.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
definitely. It's I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Jack. I'm sorry if I get banned like in the next few days. That this is the reason. But I mean, I think that all exposure and normalizing the crypto world is great. So if you have to keep doing that and saying like, hey, there's this thing you should explore. I mean, if you're comparing crypto like to government fiat, like, I mean, it's like there's no competition there. So the more exposure that we can get for this world and all of that, the better. So, and regardless of what team he's on, because I know it's just so tribal in the crypto world, he's giving exposure to crypto in general by giving exposure to Bitcoin. So I know that some people have reservations about Lightning. Maybe they're like full into BSV because they're very silly and they'll see the light one day. Whatever, this is all good for all camps, I think, at this stage. So let's see what happens there.
I'm hopeful. There's a lot of somewhat hopeful news coming out lately, and this does fall in that category.
Yeah, let's talk about Coinbase. So in the last episode, we discussed Neutrino, we discussed the history of some of the team members there, and the ties to all this illicit activity, to working for government, to spying on people, all of this stuff. So Coinbase copped a lot of flack for doing that. They really did not fare well during that whole thing, and I think that they felt it because you had Brian Armstrong coming out and Coinbase making official statements saying, oh, well, due to this pushback from the community, we've transitioned out some key members of the Neutrino team who were involved in this previous hacking and all of that. What are your thoughts on that going down?
And I just want to jump into this real quick. What were they thinking? Like, at what point did they think this was going to work out well in their favor? Like they got this group of people that had a bad background, and did they just think no one would notice? Like everyone would just clap unanimously like a bunch of NPCs, and we would just support them, and that'd be that? Like I don't get it. I just don't understand.
Yeah, it's a good question, and to be honest, this acquisition happened a while ago, and no one, it did take a while for people to do the research and kind of start talking about this. It wasn't until like a month, 2 months later. It may have even been longer than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was. I want to say November is when it happened, but right. I could be wrong about that. But this really just kind of feels like Coinbase being in that Silicon Valley bubble there, and not realizing how much the rest of the ecosystem would react negatively to a player like Neutrino being so involved with a huge crypto player like Coinbase.
Well, we've got to also think about the impetus for acquiring Neutrino in the first place. Like, what direction is Coinbase going in right now? They're a heavily regulated, very large organization at this stage. I try not to give them too much flack because they made some dumb decisions, but they also have done such an incredible job at onboarding so many people into the world and making it far easier than a lot of the other platforms out there. So there is tremendous good there. And then at the same time, you've got to think about what's going to happen to a company that is this focal point of the crypto world, where crypto is this very threatening force, and we can't just dismiss that. We have to understand that this is a threatening force for traditional finance, governments around the world. And so when you have a giant focal point like Coinbase, what sort of leverage is going on there? Now, Coinbase has been very vocal from the start about being completely compliant and all of this. Like, they did push back against the IRS, was it last year or 2 years ago, and said, no, we're not going to give you this information. And then they lost and eventually had to give over a bunch of information. And now it seems that they're in full compliance mode, because if they're hiring this tracking company that literally does blockchain analytics and blockchain, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they analyze it and can track where funds have come from, where they're going to, ownership, attached to those funds. Like, this company specializes in this. So this is very clearly a mechanism that would be helpful for governments around the world who want to be keeping track on this stuff. If they're going full compliance, then this is helpful for them for KYC. If there are accounts out there that didn't attach their names, or maybe I don't think there are any loopholes like that anymore. They used to be, but these days you need all kinds of forms of ID to start an account there, etc. But this just seems like they're really ramping up their efforts there, and it could just be because they've gone that route. They're fully compliant. They're working with the government so that no one can evade taxes, all of that. Now they have this company that is very, very good at tracking people. I don't think their mind was even in they used to work for this hacking company. I think their mind was what's the best way to get all of the information possible about all of our users?
That makes a lot of sense. Now, the question would be, at what point do you say a certain Bitcoin transaction or a Bitcoin fund is no longer nefarious, right? So, if you took a $5 bill, like we all have, just the $5 bill we have in our pocket, and we look at it, if we could trace where that $5 bill has been in the last 5 or even 8 transitions, and if any one of those is potentially something nefarious, and now you can't spend that $5 or you can't buy anything with it, how does that affect the crypto market as a whole, is with Coinbase being such a large player in the gatekeeping game? Because, what do you do with that?
I I think it's important to realize that Coinbase was doing that before this. It's just that they were outsourcing it to and hiring out a third party to do it, where they wanted to bring in Neutrino to manage it all in-house, really to help them bring on new assets and evaluate those new assets and do blockchain analysis on more and more assets. So, this isn't anything that changes how they're actually interfacing with the public. This is just bringing it more in-house and making it more obvious to people.
That
so
makes
this
sense.
is it's a lot of noise and thunder, but every exchange in the United States right now is doing blockchain analysis, has to deal with those blacklists, has to handle all of this. I mean, that's Changelly requires that even, and that's why Shapeshift started requiring accounts. I mean, this is just the reality of being a cryptocurrency related company in the United States at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on. I want to talk about Tron and the fact that they've just joined up with Tether to see USDT on the Tron blockchain. Now, I think maybe we haven't been too kind to Tron in the past. Maybe I should do an episode on it to explore it.
I think we've been far too kind.
Maybe you're right there, Chris. So, I mean, Justin Sun also, I mean, he's just king of spin, and we've talked about that a lot on the show. What's going on here with Tether? Because Tether, they've had a lot of bad PR. There's been a lot of trash talking about them, about like, oh, well, they're insolvent and all of this. This was never proven, by the way. This is just a lot of allegations out there. And I think we always have to take that with a grain of salt, because a lot of those came just prior to a bunch more stable coins were released on the market. So you got to wonder, like, why does everyone just jump on the we hate Tether bandwagon all at once? Like, it seems very orchestrated, a lot of these things do, a lot of the time. So we have to be careful of that. But at the same time, like, you have kind of the Justin Sun and then Tether, and they both have kind of like strange backgrounds that people like to hate on. Now they're joining forces. This is going to make them stronger. Is this going to, like, what's the effect of this, and why are they going over to Tron?
Chris, you go ahead, my man.
Well, Tron is the, hey, we ate at McDonald's, so now we have McDonald's partnership crypto. But so I'm not really sure what exactly is going on there. I mean, right now, Tether is mostly on the Omni layer protocol. The vast majority of Tether exists there. Some Tether, 60 million or so, exists on the Ethereum blockchain. And now they're going to have apparently they're calling it a TRC20 token, which, come on, Tron, really. But now there's going to be a token of that has a certain amount of USDT issued via that token as well. We do know that they did recently move their banking around late last year, more of it into the Asian area. And I know that Tron has more influence in Chinese and China markets in the surrounding area. So this could be related to Tether trying to play nice with some of the more Chinese areas. That's just complete spitballing. I have no evidence of that. It's just the only reason I could see them trying to play nice with Tron would be that. I see no rational reason to create yet another USDT token on another blockchain.
No, and I agree completely with that. I agree absolutely. I mean, being on an ERC20 or a TRC20 or its own blockchain or some other blockchain or put on EOS or whatever you want to be put on, it doesn't really matter. Like, is the money there, and is there a token that I can use it to one-to-one with USD? And that's it. The rest of it is just partnerships, handshakes, and media flair, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. So is this like another spin project? And it doesn't matter like which blockchain these things are on. I mean, kind of does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I could see a lot of advantage for Tron in this exchange. Where Tron, has a major token issued on its chain that people know about. It gives them more legitimacy. I don't see the advantage to Tether in this. I
agree there.
So that implies to me that there's something going on behind the scenes that the public is not aware of. Be it some friends of Tron demanded they do this so that they can play nice in the Chinese market, or a bunch of money exchanged hands and suddenly, bam, Tether is solvent again. I don't know. But there could be any number of things in this area that cause Tether to do this. But,
No, I'm with you. I don't know why they would do this on either side, really. I mean, I get why Tron would. They get some fees, they get a little bit of money, they get some notoriety. But for USDT, there's like everyone knows what USDT is. Why? Like, I love Tron. I just like it because the guy's always so crazy. Like, he's always out there. Justin Sun's out there pushing everything. And here's another reason. Like, they got USDT for no reason. We don't know why. It just happened, and I'm okay with that.
They did have the most efficient white paper writing out there.
Hey man, they say if you can't write a white paper to stand on the shoulders of giants by copying pasting other people's. What is it, Storage or something? What was the white paper that they copied?
I think they copied a few different ones. I don't know.
A few different ones. At any rate, they've since edited that to make changes, but that doesn't really matter since the majority of people bought without even having read the white paper, apparently. Back when
apparently, yeah. I mean, I have to agree with you. You guys, and you say I don't see the benefit for Tether at this stage. Maybe they're looking for some sort of rebranding opportunity. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but definitely it does seem like it's putting Tron in the spotlight at the moment. Let's move on. So, about a month ago, Crypto Facilities was purchased by Kraken. And they're a platform where people can trade, and there are lots of different things that you can do there. But basically, in the past month, Crypto Facilities has just grown tremendously since this acquisition. Let's have a look at some of the prices here. So future trading nears $1 billion in the first month at the Kraken crypto exchange, which is, that's pretty giant.
Not bad, Kraken.
Everybody loves derivatives. It's amazing. I mean, they bought Kraken bought them for $100 million at the beginning of February, and to trade over $1 billion worth of futures in the last month that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, derivatives are super important in our financial ecosystem because they have all sorts of use cases and benefits. And the great thing about futures is that it helps to stabilize the price of Bitcoin. There's huge arbitrage opportunities there. So I think that's great that they're seeing a lot of movement there. And also, I'm a huge fan of Kraken, so I'm glad that that's been a net benefit to them. I know that like when CME came out with their futures, market didn't really even budge. Like there was no hype around that. I think because we've been so numbed now, any sort of announcement about anything to do with traditional financial tools like ETFs or derivatives or futures or whatever, we're kind of like, oh, again, we're not thinking about it anymore. But then you just see the use case, may not have affected the price, but there's so many people using it, almost $1 billion. That's really significant.
This is one of those indicators to me of continued interest and continued, I would say, overall good news for people wanting to be involved with the ecosystem. Even though futures themselves aren't how we want crypto to be used, not the primary use case, it is an important part of the growth of the ecosystem.
And the different assets that they're trading. So Ethereum and XRP have also seen large numbers apparently, but Bitcoin has far surpassed both of those. Mm-hmm. Still the most popular asset that's being traded there and has the largest contracts as well, which makes sense because there's the most liquidity there out of all of them. And
but they do offer futures on Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah.
So that'll be really. These tools will affect the next bull run because again, the last bull run we were in, there was no way to short any of these major altcoins, and it was very hard to short even Bitcoin. So there was not a lot of pressure holding it back through shorting it, which allowed the bull run to get to the heights it got to.
Yeah, for sure. Let's keep moving on. So we have a renowned historian of money who just says he was very wrong about Bitcoin. But you don't actually get that. You don't actually get some of these vocal antagonistic players in the space then come out and say, actually, let me take that back. A lot of them are just like, no, you wait and see. I'll be proven. I'll be vindicated, they just continue to trash talk. So it is actually quite refreshing to have Niall Ferguson, who is, as I said, a renowned economic historian, and he was once named one of the most influential people in the world by Time magazine. And he said that he was very wrong about Bitcoin. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, he initially said, I don't know, probably about in 2014 or 2015, that Bitcoin was a complete delusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay then.
Well, all right. That's one thing to say, I guess.
Yeah. I just thought it was very nice when high-profile individuals like this admit they were wrong. I mean, how often does that happen in general? And it's great when they admit they were wrong about something as important as Bitcoin. And he is a fan of, Friedrich Hayek, and he's a fan of the denationalization of money through Bitcoin. So I think this is great, because he wants stabilized purchasing power. He's a fan of sound money. He knows that if we leave money in the hands of the central banks, it'll always be inflated out from under us, and that purchasing power won't be maintained. So I think this is great to have somebody with a sound economic background and a knowledge of history come around on Bitcoin like this.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was actually chatting to someone the other day. So I went to the Center for Free Enterprise in Kentucky. I was there yesterday, the day before, and Sasha Hodder, who you probably know from my show, from her podcast called The Hobcast. We did a presentation on regulation in the space, and it was really, really fun, by the way, and I'm very grateful to the Center for Free Enterprise. But something came up about, we were talking about the history of Bitcoin and how Jeffrey Tucker was actually the first Austrian that really started being a proponent of Bitcoin. And then you have people like Gene Epstein, former economics editor of Barron's, saying, yeah, the only reason I started to take it seriously is because Jeffrey Tucker was taking it seriously. So it really does only take one person who's reputable and well-known and has a lot of intellectual credibility to come around and start to look at this in a different way for others to follow suit and say, maybe I should not dismiss this so easily. So I think this is great that Niall has said this. I also think that, quite often our conception, especially if you study money, then you have a very good understanding of what money has always been. And that doesn't necessarily dictate what money will be in the future, because a lot of our understanding of money is really held back by the technology of the time. We've always thought of currencies converging and us just ending up with one currency that we all love at the end of the day, because back in the day, you're not going to wander around with a wallet that has gold and copper and silver and diamonds and cigarettes and salt. Things at once, right? You're not going to have a bag big enough. So
sounds like my kind of wallet.
A bag of cigarettes, you say?
Yeah, well, it's just not feasible to carry physical.
Yeah.
But when you have a digital wallet where an extra 100 currencies doesn't make a difference to how heavy it is in your hand, that sort of consideration really flies out the window. And I think our understanding of what money is changing, and you have someone like Niall who is changing his conception of money. And before, he said that there was no use for a form of currency based on blockchain technology. He said there's no use for that. And I think now that we're starting to see all of the use cases that are emerging, and I mean, we've seen use cases in the black market, but we also see use cases in very legal markets where you have people being deplatformed on social media, deplatformed from Patreon, etc., who have been demonetized. And not doing anything illegal, they've just been demonetized, right? So this is a very amazing use case for cryptocurrency and a decentralized money that can't be shut down, because it takes power away from payment processes that are curtailing freedom of speech currently. So we're seeing more and more use cases come around. So the value proposition of Bitcoin just increases as more of these use cases become evident to us.
Yeah, I do think this article is full of great quotes. They do have some good lines from Hayek, from the nationalization of money, about how the older generation won't realize how it'll work, and then we shouldn't let the foreseeable opposition of the established practitioners deter us. It also has a great quote from Krugman, who I love to quote, as always, saying, "I'm on record as saying that crypto is a mismatch of technobabble and libertarian derp. But I guess I should also add that it's a giant draw for sufferers from Dunning-Kruger syndrome." Krugman is nothing if not predictably wrong on these things. Just send him a picture of a fax machine. That's all you have to do.
He is very entertaining, though, I have to say. I mean, and he sparked my favorite event of the year, which is the Contra Krugman Crew. time. So, you know what? Maybe it's not all bad. You go on this cruise and you spend your whole time just like sipping champagne in the jacuzzi, talking about all the ways that Kraken is an idiot. That's a pretty fun way to spend your day.
I'd go. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. One of the quotes from my old boss was, if you can't be a good example, you'll just have to be a horrible warning. So thank you, Kraken, for being a horrible warning.
Yeah, I mean, Niall also, he says something very interesting, and I think it really, like, this point needs to be hit home for a lot of people, because you have these smug naysayers in crypto, right, who say, like, well, Bitcoin is a fad, Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme, Bitcoin is dead, and they say it all the time, and every time they say it, like, we have to combat their stupid data points where they're saying, well, it wasn't it like $20,000 a year ago? What is it now? 3,000? And they're so smug when they say this sort of stuff. And what Niall actually pointed out, I mean, he says, people asked him, like, are you dismayed at the fall in price that, now it's sitting at around 3,000? And he says, it remains a long way from zero. And that's such a good thing to point out, just because we're trying to, find out like what the price is at the moment. That's going to take a long time. We're going to need a lot more liquidity in the market. We're going to need a lot more just time and more people involved for us to have the correct price determination. And the fact that it's at 3,000, that's pretty awesome, He said it's a long way from zero. Clearly, there are a lot of people out there who see the value proposition of Bitcoin right now because it's nowhere near zero, which is what it would need to get to for this thing to be useless. Like, for Bitcoin to die, it's not good enough for it to even go to $2. It's not good enough, because at $2, that's still valuable for people, and that's not dead. US dollar is $1 right now. So put that in your perspective, like. So it's a great point when he says, like, this is a long way from zero, so we really should not be dismayed. There's clearly a lot of use case for this.
Oh, yeah, and you mind if I add something real quick? As time moves
forward... No, I invited you on this show to be quiet, Blakely. What are you doing?
Please, Naomi.
Oh, fine.
Okay, so get this. As time moves forward, do you think that we're going to have more buyers or more sellers? And the reason I ask that is because as time moves forward, we should decrease the number of sellers, because there will be people that are just like, I'm done, I don't want to deal with this anymore, but there will always be new buyers. That's the thing. And the more people that buy are the more people that are interested. Like, I'll continue to buy, which means that I'm still here, and there's other people that are doing the same thing. The people that sell just sell, and they're like, hey, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, and that's fine. So we should run low on sellers, and we should have an increase in buyers the longer we move forward. If that's the way I see it, and that's incredibly basic and super, super lowbrow, like low level view. But I think that at the end of the day, I think that's what keeps me from just saying this is over and just leaving. But I do think that it's a functional thing that people like.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why a lot of people are pointing towards the next halvening for the start of the next real run, because by its nature, that will cut in half the amount of Bitcoins being sold. Give or take.
Yeah, and so I just want to give a shout out to Crypto Art. I think that's their website, crypto.com. I just the Satoshi Roundtable, and they have these gorgeous prints. Anyway, I got 2 of them, and they just arrived. And one of them is about a Bitcoin halvening, and they're these most beautifully designed. It's really cool. I posted a picture on my Twitter, but I'll post a link in the comments. But check out their stuff because it's beautiful, and they double as paper wallets as well. So they have QR codes built in that you can send stuff to, and yeah, pretty cool. So let's move on. City of Denver is to pilot blockchain voting app in the upcoming elections, which is pretty interesting as well. I believe that they have some elections coming up in May, and so these are just municipal elections, and they're going to be testing out blockchain voting. We have seen this in the past. Different countries around the world have been piloting certain systems. Nothing on like federal level major events yet, but it's still very, very cool to see different use cases for the decentralization of trust, which is blockchain.
Voting is one of those easy areas for people to understand the use for something like blockchain. Everybody knows that having a uncorruptible record that everybody can prove that they signed themselves is useful when it comes to voting, and it's only going to get more and more obvious to people as more and more issues come up with the existing voting system. In Virginia, they have to have a new election because of the obvious and blatant election fraud that seems to have occurred there. and it's just going to keep happening more and more, and people want to control their own vote. I mean, that's one of the fundamental understandings of the American citizen, whatever my personal thoughts about democracy in general are, being able to prove that people actually voted for what they're claiming they voted for is an important part of any democratic-like process.
Right.
I agree.
So let's move on. I want to talk about the London Stock Exchange. So if anyone has ever seen Patrick Byrne speak before or seen Bruce Fenton speak before, they talk a lot about settlement layers and about how incredibly corrupt everything is. You think about all of the transactions that need to be settled at the end of the day. When you had like paper slips flying around, at the end of the day they'd all keep track of who gave what to whom, and it was all very complicated. And now you think that we have things moving at lightning speed and all kinds of different financial tools out there, and they needed to create a system for settling all of this, which is basically just like one organization, and it's very opaque. No one really knows what's going on in there. It's like, is this crazy system that not many people know about, but I think I'll be posting a video of a presentation Bruce did recently soon, so I'll let you guys know. It kind of goes into great detail about the history of this, but basically you have different countries around the world and different stock exchanges that are looking into replacing this settlement system with blockchain tech, which is pretty interesting. And now we always kind of like to hate on traditional finance, the stock exchange, we don't need them and all that. But really what they're doing is they're recognizing that blockchain could be a superior way of settling, which is fantastic. It absolutely could. And if this leads to a more transparent system as well, and less trust placed in these opaque juggernauts that we don't really know anything about, I think that getting away from that financial model is really interesting. So the London Stock Exchange leads a $20 million bet on blockchain to cut out custody middlemen, which is really, really interesting. Apparently there's this company called Nivora. Is that how you pronounce it? Nivora, something like that. So, and probably different if you have British accent as well. Basically, they have a $20 million seed round, and the London Stock Exchange has contributed heavily to that. There are other companies that have also contributed that include Santander Bank, law firm Allen & Overy, blockchain venture capital firm Digital Currency Group, many others. But you're looking at Santander, so I believe that they're currently looking at XRP as a settlement layer. So there's a lot of competition out there for these different tools. So we'll have to see. That's great as well, because as I said before you had like one company in America that handle all of this. So if you can now have all these different tools, people can go back to having a competition in the marketplace. It seems kind of interesting.
Well,
yeah, no, absolutely.
You mentioned Patrick Byrne. It's important to realize that he's very active in the space in a whole bunch of different areas. Even the company behind the Denver voting we just talked about is backed by his investment group. So they are very active in this space. But one thing about like the stocks, we talk about stocks now, whatever, we don't care, but they're going to exist forever. People want to share shares of their company. And a lot of people don't realize that over the years, there have been lots of examples of more shares being sold for a company than actually exists. And this has caused a lot of issues in various markets at various times. I mean, people talk about, we don't know, like, is the current valuation of the market reflective of what's actually there? Because most people don't really own the stocks they supposedly own. It's just sort of an entry on a ledger that is not great and not well maintained. And the blockchain does offer, again, a very good ability to run a simple ledger like stocks need to be recorded on. And this is probably going to be an area that it does take over because it's such an obvious fit for this problem where you can actually prove. And not only that, where right now the vast majority of people who hold stocks don't actually hold the stocks. They just trust that their broker has registered that they own the stock with a system that is then settled and yada, 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 which is why there's so many problems of double issuance. Where with a blockchain-based system, that's what we in the crypto world talk about. You control your own keys. Thus, you can hold and have custody of your own stocks, of the stocks you own. And that actually breaks a lot of the business model in the traditional stock world, because a lot of the investor or investment bankers and people you work with there, they will actually charge you for custody. So if you have $100,000 worth of stocks, they're going to charge you a couple $1,000s a year just to hold on to that for you, not even including any trading fees and whatnot. So by doing this, this potentially allows the traditional stock markets to move forward in time and have less overhead and allow people, even smaller people who maybe only own fractions of stocks, to maintain their own ownership and just get charged when they actually trade. So this is overall good and positive, and it will bring a more positive look to blockchain in general, which I think is only positive for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
Oh yeah, and I got to jump in. I didn't know that until last year sometime. I didn't realize that the stocks you bought on like Fidelity or one of the other, let's just say Robinhood, whatever, you're not actually buying the stock. You're buying a paper that says you own the stock and it's held by that company that you're trading on. And to get that stock, if you actually want to hold the stock in your hand and get a certificate, you own it, no one else knows you have it, whatever, you've got to pay them like an amount of money per transaction you want, and then they mail them to you. But then once you get it, you can't trade it. So you hold the paper. What are you going to do with it? You can't do anything with it unless you go back to one of these people and say, hey, would you please let me keep my stock? And then they go through this whole process. You could pay them some money and they put it in the system. Then you can trade it. I think blockchain would be really great, but that's going to be a really hard sell for a lot of these companies because that's where they make their money, you know? Like they don't want you to have control over your stocks.
Well, that's why I'm so excited about what's happening in Wyoming, for example. I mean, we've talked at length about this on the show, about how Wyoming already has laws against hypothecations. So you actually can't take, you know, someone's money and then use it as stake on multiple things, as collateral on multiple loans, for example. You can only do it once. So rehypothecating that money is illegal. And then you've got like the crypto element in there where you currently they just implemented, you can now start new institutions that have 100% reserves that are crypto institutions. They can be like specialty example, and so this would be a way to like get around fractional reserve banking. If you're someone who doesn't want to give your money to a bank, you're getting like multiple where they're giving out multiple IOU slips for every dollar that you're putting in, and if there's a bank run and you can't get your money, you know, then maybe you could use one of these other institutions and use crypto or something like that. So lots of interesting things coming up in different states that are dealing with these issues. And I know they did get a lot of pushback actually in Wyoming when they tried to implement some of these laws, especially because in traditional finance, like you can't actually. People say that Wyoming doesn't exist.
Yeah, there's a whole series of memes, and the whole time you're talking about Wyoming, I can't help myself. I was sitting there thinking, that's all I'm thinking about. It doesn't exist, Naomi. Naomi, it doesn't exist. How can that be happening?
What are you doing? Stop perpetuating this lie.
It's a state-run government conspiracy, and you know it, Naomi. I'm here to ask the tough questions.
I'm glad you're here, Blakely.
Oh, that's fine.
No, but right now, I mean, it's really interesting what's going on in Wyoming. Because they have all these kinds of different laws, like in traditional finance, in order for, like, there are lots of different things that you can't actually own yourself, that you need these middlemen to own, brokers to hold different types of assets for you, because they don't recognize the property rights of an individual having those things. And they tried to pass those laws in Wyoming to apply to crypto assets. The idea being that they're trying to protect people so that if some 18-year-old wants to start a crypto hedge fund, it's basically a way of making sure that anyone who holds this money is licensed properly and vetted and all of this. But that also would preclude an individual from holding their own money. The property rights wouldn't have been recognized for that individual. They would have needed to go through traditional finance, the same way that you just mentioned with these stocks. Like, you could get that slip of paper yourself, but like you're forced to use this system that you don't necessarily want to use. And what's great about Wyoming is that they've just introduced a new bill that recognizes the property rights and digital assets of the individual, so you don't need a middleman. So you don't need to go through traditional financial institutions, for example, which is just really great news.
That is very
Absolutely. Cool. And that's part of what crypto is all about, being your own bank, have control of your own finances, where in the past we had to give our gold or our paper money or whatever to an institution because we couldn't hold it all ourselves. Crypto allows us to hold it ourselves, carry it around on ourselves. If somebody sends me a bunch of Bitcoin in the middle of the night, it's not going to make my phone too heavy to pick up, we talked about earlier. There's just the ability for people to control their own resource, and it's going to take a shift for a lot of people to understand this and actually take responsibility for it, because so many people are used to somebody else being there to hold their hand and take care of them in so many financial transactions that having nobody else to run to will be difficult for a lot of people to adjust to.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Philadelphia at the moment. So they've just become the first major US city to ban cashless stores. So there are some places out there that, for example, they only accept card. It makes a lot of sense, especially if you're in like food handling, for example. You don't necessarily want to be dealing with dollar notes and coins and all of this. If you can just get someone to swipe their card at the till. A lot of places do this now, but Philadelphia has become the first major US city to ban these cashless stores, which is very interesting, and I think is kind of terrible. But at the same time, it also seems to be the opposite end of banning cash, which is better than banning cash. So, what do you guys think about this?
I think that's odd. I know we talked about this a little bit before the show, and I wanted to mention, I thought that there was some kind of law in the books that said you had to accept cash if someone presented it to you, but it turns out that there isn't, and it's left up completely to the states. Some places can make it legal, some places can make it illegal. It's also up to the business owner unless the state says otherwise. It makes sense to ban cash in an environment like you were discussing, Naomi, with food handling or anything like that, or small places that maybe don't want to, carry a large sum of money. I wouldn't want to have a day's worth of funds holding in my pocket if I'm closing up at 2 a.m. in the Bronx of New York City. That's just something I wouldn't want to do. So maybe I would ban cash there. But that's interesting. That is an incredibly interesting thing. I don't really have much of an opinion. What about you, Chris?
Well, we did talk about various places banning cash and how that means they want the banks to track everything, yada, yada, yada. But this is the other direction. It's quite interesting because they're highlighting the issues that people in Philadelphia have because they can't get credit or debit cards. When we're in the cryptocurrency world, a lot of time we talk about how rough it is for merchants with credit and debit cards. They have the added fees to every transaction. They have to deal with chargebacks. They have to deal with a whole bunch of other things, or maybe they work in the pod or natural medicine areas, and they just can't get the ability to accept credit cards. But on the flip side, it is hard for people of certain means. Either they've had bad credit in the past, or they're just too poor to really even get a credit or debit card, even though most people watching this probably have never experienced that. They've always been able to get some form of plastic. But there are a group of people, and even in America, that simply can't. And crypto really helps them too, because there are no gatekeepers. If they can turn their cash into crypto, they can have their crypto and move around with it. And this is why cryptocurrency, even in America, can have a very big impact on people's lives, because they don't have to carry this cash around. They can securely carry their cryptocurrency and use it at places that accept it. So this is certainly a group of people that we shouldn't forget about when we're developing cryptocurrencies and the tools to use them.
Yeah, for sure. I just think anything that curtails what an individual business wants to do is just the wrong thing to do, right? An individual merchant needs to be able to decide for themselves what is best for their business. And there are all these different competing financial tools right now. There's PayPal and what are some of those other ones that like the cool kids? Stripe? No, but I'm talking about that other one that everyone uses and like tracks it, sends it to your friends and says like, hey, such and such just sent this amount to their friend, which is like the weirdest thing. Like, I don't know why anyone would want to use that function anyway. But then then you've got different cryptocurrencies on top of that, and then you've got like Visa and MasterCard, but then you've got like direct pay, you've got check as well. There are all of these competing methods at the moment, and I think that individuals need to be able to use the marketplace and to use whatever is best for their business.
Yeah, when you put it that way, it actually raises the very good point that cash now has a competitive disadvantage at these locations when compared to credit cards, even though credit cards has the added fee. So for whatever reason, these places don't accept credit cards. It could be for safety, because a lot of areas in Philadelphia where you don't want to close at 2 a.m. and then walk to the ATM to deposit your $9,000 because you're trying to avoid the IRS recording rules. And this is the government stepping in to try to counteract that competitive disadvantage that they've made happen to protect the poor people. But I was trying to look at it from the other direction of what this means for general.
Venmo. Thank you. Thank you, chat.
So,
Venmo. It's the dumbest.
yeah.
I use Venmo, by the way, because sometimes it's
Oh.
convenient. But like, I don't get that whole make my transaction public. Everyone knows I went to dinner and paid $17 for a vegan cake. Like, I mean, it just seems so dumb, right? I don't know.
Well,
I don't get
that's what
it.
the public blockchain does, and once they can attach your Bitcoin addresses to your identity, then that's essentially what sending a Bitcoin transaction does, right?
Yeah, that's why you've got to have just a big conglomeration of Bitcoin addresses, just thousands of them for yourself.
Absolutely.
And beware the dusting attacks.
Oh.
Yeah. We should do an episode on that, Chris. We should talk into some different security concerns.
Absolutely, yeah.
That out there that people don't even think about, right? There's so much that goes on that an average person, if you existed in only traditional finance for a long time, you have no idea that this is a thing you have to worry about. So maybe we'll do something specifically about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Always a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, that's actually, I had never actually looked into dusting attacks, but these are incredibly interesting and, wow, problematic. Ooh.
Well,
you want to go into like a quick, because now we've talked about it enough that if anyone...
Yeah, just touch it a little bit,
yeah. All right, Chris, give us a little brief overview of what that is.
So a dusting attack is when somebody spends very, very small amounts of crypto to addresses in an attempt that when that person who controls that address sends out coins, because that person likely controls more than one address, all their coins are not in that address. If they were to send a transaction that included that address as well as other addresses, then you'd be able to tie in those addresses together to the same person. Because theoretically, when you're actually spending it, maybe you're going to buy a hotel. So you've sent the Bitcoin, so they know that you have then bought a hotel because they were able to tie that address to the hotels because they can watch the blockchain from that end. So then they know that you bought item A at this date. This address that you used to buy item A is associated with this other address that was used to buy the hotel. So now they know that you bought your, pink unicorn slippers and you like going to Taiwan. I mean, they figure this out about you from watching the blockchain, which is why the pseudo-anonymity of Bitcoin can be very risky when it comes to these sorts of things.
Yeah,
interesting.
There are also different implications of that as well, right? Because different number of inputs that goes into a transaction affects the transaction fee, correct?
Correct. Theoretically,
like if you're sending a dollar, if you're sending like a dollar to someone, but it's made up of like a million different inputs, which is feasible with Bitcoin, then that's going to be a very expensive transaction for just sending someone a dollar.
Correct. And that's a problem with Bitcoin right now, where if you're a busy merchant, say you want to accept Bitcoin for your soda machine. So, it's a bunch of individual $1 transactions that are going to the soda machine, and you're going to want to withdraw that. But say you can't have more than 500 inputs in a transaction, and even with 500 inputs, that transaction is going to be hideously expensive, likely more expensive than the value you're actually trying to send. So that is a problem with slow, expensive cryptos like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
For actual real world small transactions. Say a soda machine of $1, but realistically, a Wendy's or a McDonald's with their dollar menu, a bunch of people doing $4 or $5 individual transactions. At the end of a day, the McDonald's is going to have to send a bunch of transactions just to gather all those individual little ones into one big UTXO. And that's just going to be expensive and time consuming and costly and potentially risky because whoever does it has to have access to the private keys to actually do it. So there's just a lot of problems with cryptocurrency and that sort of business right now that people really don't talk about, which in my mind shows how little any crypto is really used on the retail side.
Right, interesting. Let's move along. I want to talk a little bit about Etoro, and we are running out of time here. So they are bringing their crypto wallet to the US for the first time, which is really interesting. They're pretty huge in the rest of the world. I think they're operational in 140 different countries. And I mean, you would have seen them if you went to Consensus this year. I believe it was this year, or maybe it was last year. It was last year, actually. So they were one of the major sponsors there, and they bought the seat covers in the conference. So when you looked through the conference, you just saw like Etoro, like it's just everywhere. Their logo was everywhere, and so it's very interesting that they're finally coming to the US.
Well, they're a little bit fun. They're kind of related to Coinbase and also Robinhood. So they're fitting kind of in that niche of being a trading application as well as a custodial wallet. They seem to have kind of fun. They released a commercial at some point last year, I can't remember how long ago, where they had Hodor standing in an elevator door saying "hodl, hodl,
hodl,"
panicking, and that was an entertaining commercial just because. But they are, again, trying to make it easier for people to buy and hold and trade cryptocurrencies. And they're going to start off with Bitcoin, ETH, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ripple, and Stellar.
So was this the article that the organization was talking about, like automated trading and being able to copy other people's like more skilled trades using your own wallets? That is the coolest thing. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. So exactly right. So it's like kind of like TradingView, where you can see anybody else on the platform and what they're doing, and you can actually automate saying, "Hey, this guy makes money. Do what he does."
Yeah, I'm not very good at trading, but this guy, here's like a couple grand. Good luck. I hope I have more in BTC tomorrow. That's pretty wild. That is pretty wild.
Yeah, and actually, it's interesting because they trade everything. Like Robinhood, they do. They have like 1,500 different assets, stocks, bonds, whatever. But in America, they're just going to start with cryptocurrencies because apparently it's easier for them to get started with that in America than it is to get started with everything else. So they think they're really big on the tokenization of assets, which ties into the London Stock Exchange thing we talked about earlier with tokenizing the assets on the blockchain there. So they're a big fan of that kind of thing. So they're pushing for it. And they're, again, at a high level, this is making it easier for people to get involved in the cryptocurrency ecosystem, which I think is a good thing, and I think is what will allow the next bull run to surpass the last.
And it's very interesting that some of these larger companies, they're sort of built up outside of America as well. So you kind of have in America some certain companies who kind of have a large footprint. They've captured a lot of the market there for whatever reason. Maybe it's because they happen to have the architect of the bit license on their board. Or maybe they just grown a tremendous company, and then a lot of, because of the difficulties that you mentioned, Chris, about entering US marketplace, they've built up elsewhere, but now they're large enough that they are entering, and they sort of provide competition there. It's like competition between two large institutions or several large institutions, which is always very interesting.
Yeah, and as Coinbase fails in certain ways, like they did with that acquisition, places like this are going to be more attractive. 2 years ago, if I was going to get somebody involved in the Bitcoin ecosystem, I was going to point them at Coinbase. There really weren't any easier and better options. Where now, if I need to get somebody involved in the cryptocurrency space, there are a lot of options, and there's more coming every day.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Are you giggling because Lambo Llama is handing out chocolate in the chat room?
I got some chocolate.
Likely, it's not real chocolate. All right, calm down.
I'm already excited. My hands are sweaty. I'm so excited about this. I'm gonna go back for seconds.
Oh my god! All right, well, guys, if anyone wants some chocolate, Lambo Llama's there. He's feeling generous. He's got cookies, whatever. If anyone else is feeling generous, then I have linked my my Power Chat link from Bitbacker here. If anyone wants to send in any questions that we can answer on the show, that's always appreciated as well. And it gets highlighted in the nice little Power Chat section on the screen, which is this cool thing that I'm trying out in this stream now. And let me know your thoughts, if there are better ways to do it, if there are other platforms you would recommend. Because Streamlabs is kind of convoluted. I've tried the open source software, OBS as well. It's all pretty fiddly. So if anyone else has another system they recommend, then let me know. Oh, Llama just handed out chocolate for everyone. Thank you, Llama, for that. I'm posting the link to Bitbacker in the chat in case anyone wants that, and you can watch all the streams through there. Otherwise, go and check out the content creators putting out amazing things on Bitbacker. They would love your support. The final thing I'm going to wrap up with today, there's this document called the Dev Report that is put out by Electric Capital. Basically, it details as where developers are building across the crypto ecosystem, which is always a great metric to gauge how well something's doing. Like there's a lot of dumb money in crypto, a lot of people just going to whatever the most recent buzz is. So price is not always a reliable indicator of something's worth. It's a very valuable tool, but it's not the be all and end all, whereas actually looking at where development and building is happening is really interesting. So we're just going to take a quick look at this as a sort of overview. Do you want to start that off there, Chris?
Yeah, it's very interesting looking at the different ecosystems among the top coins and how busy or not busy some of them are. And we just have, I don't know, basically there's a difference too between looking at the core development versus the ecosystem development. And both of them are reasonable ways to look at things, but it's important to keep them separate too, because a bunch of people working on the API or the Electrum wallet or whatever is not going to advance the core protocol. And if you look at how many active monthly developers, and when they say active monthly developers, we're talking about a number of developers that have issued a commit that's more than just like rolling in something upstream or downstream every month. And you can see, how some coins are pretty stable, like, Bitcoin Core, pretty stable. Ethereum continues to climb. XRP Core stays pretty small, and so on and so forth. And just looking through these, it's a very reasonable way to judge different products and their ecosystems. So you can see various actual activity code-wise. And because, we are talking about code and what it actually is and what that means for the project, and how many big coins have fewer than 5 monthly developers. Like, Litecoin Core is down to 3 monthly developers.
But how many developers do you need to just copy and paste Bitcoin Core's code?
Well, that's the thing. If you look at the different activity and the levels, like Komodo was a big one that basically copies a bunch of stuff from Zcoin upstream for its privacy and zk snarks and stuff.
Well, one thing that I have liked about Litecoin is that they're going into, they're sort of like this, almost like a test net for Bitcoin in a lot of ways. And Charlie has even spoken about it like that, the same way that they implemented SegWit before Bitcoin did, kind of tested that network out and proved that.
Yeah, and you can say that as a good thing. But
now they're looking into privacy as well, which I think is great. If they can get that going, maybe Bitcoin would be tempted to add some privacy features.
And privacy on a blockchain is very nice and very good. And it's very interesting how they're doing it. It's just also interesting that, again, they've had 3 active developers under the last month, which seems like too few to effectively implement a privacy coin. But you're absolutely right in that Litecoin has been a testnet for Bitcoin. The question is, do you want your money to be a test net for some other money? That doesn't seem like something you really want.
You're not wrong, Chris. But I remember. Here's what's frustrating. Like, I remember back during the run up when everybody was buying and everybody's networks were problematic. Ethereum was messed up. Bitcoin was messed up. Everybody was paying huge amounts of money, waiting large amounts of time. And you know what everyone did? They all used Litecoin, and I didn't have any problems. I don't know if everyone had that. I don't know if there were no problems with Litecoin transactions, but I didn't have any.
Well, the reason for that is because that was how you could get into the ecosystem through Coinbase. That was why everybody used Litecoin. And there was actually about a 10% premium on Litecoin at Coinbase.
Well, they also had SegWit as well, so that took a lot of the size and what was creating a bottleneck in Bitcoin. That took a lot of that away. So
yes and no. SegWit helps in the absolute size. It doesn't necessarily help in some of the other issues. And if you listen to Craig Wright, SegWit is just a ticking time bomb that'll blow everything up next year.
That's Craig Wright.
And we all listen to Craig Wright because he
Let's all get our helmets on.
He's Satoshi, am I right?
Oh yeah, he's Satoshi. I'm gonna throw all my private keys in the lake. Like, that's it. That's the end of it. That guy, not for me.
So Litecoin was useful at the time simply because everything else was full. And, to be fair, some people managed to make a decent amount of money buying Litecoin and other exchanges and selling it at Coinbase.
Oh, yeah.
For that week or so or a few days that was going on. But that's, again, a reason that you have multiple blockchains. That's a reason why, Bitcoin giving up on on-chain scaling, I think, is a bad idea.
Yeah, same. Agreed completely on that point. That's what I was trying to get to, is that really Bitcoin has a great possibility right here. Why is it that we've all decided, well, we'll just make Bitcoin a source of value storage, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense. To me, I don't get that.
You can't really have whatever. I'm not. Forget it.
That's a whole nother episode right there, guys. We could talk about this for an hour.
Yes, that alone is enough. But to go back to it, I mean, Bitcoin doesn't actually have the most commits or the most developers, but it certainly has the most value by blockchain per developer. Some other big ones that seem to have a lot of different commits, Cardano's up there, Tron is up there.
You can mention Tron, even though this is their white space commits for the most part.
Yeah. that is a problem with all of this, is how you actually calculate these. I mean, you can get drastically different statistics from watching GitHub just by how you look at these commits and how you're able to filter out the junk commits.
Yep.
And it's very difficult to actually know what's real and what's not.
It's maddening. It can make you crazy.
But if you look at total code commits, that's not just the core protocol stuff, but also look at wallets, docs, APIs, et cetera, et cetera. Ethereum is by far the highest, like almost twice as much as anybody else.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
sorry, go ahead, quickly.
Naomi, you're the lady here. You're the person in charge of it. You go ahead. I'll go second.
I feel bad. I told Llama not to give you chocolate. You go, quickly.
Oh, all right. Okay, so, I mean, that makes a lot of sense with the ERC-20. I mean, if you count, does that take into account everything that's built on that ERC-20 protocol?
That's an excellent question. I do not believe so, because I don't think it's going to cover all of the token development, because it can't cover all the token development.
Surely it couldn't. Surely.
Impossible.
Okay, that answered my question. Sorry. Go ahead, Naomi.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about Ethereum again. It's like a coin that people love to hate. Because there are a lot of limitations to it. Obviously, we talk about that and they try to fix a lot of those. But just like you're talking about, Chris, I mean, they create so much movement in the crypto world. They really did provide a vehicle for people to come in. And it's like this sandbox as well. It's this really fun vehicle for people to play, because it's just so easy to create all kinds of things on the Ethereum network. So that's very interesting. And it's not surprising that there's so many developers over there.
Yep, and really, it is still the biggest, quote-unquote, world computer. Whether or not that's going to be something that we need in the long run, we'll have to see, but it definitely has a lot of activity. And overall, if you look over the last 2 years, the number of developers working on public coins has more than doubled in 2 years, which I think is just indicative of we're not going away. It wasn't just a spike at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, and just dropped. Basically, we have dropped back down some, but we're only a little bit below where we were at the peak of the crypto prices as far as development activity and active developers. So, from January 2018 to January 2019, monthly devs only fell 4%, while crypto markets fell, as we all know, 80 or so percent. So this is, I think, again, something that from a basic level, trying to put some fundamental evaluation into the crypto market in general, as well as the individual coins. This is certainly one metric from looking at coins about how active the development and developers are, which I think is an interesting way to do it. Whether or not fundamental analysis actually matters when it comes to coins yet is something else entirely.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I can post a link to this resources report that came out as well. So you can all look up everything that's going on. It's just great insight into the space. I do want to mention that someone sent me through a power chat on Bitbacker. Thank you so much. It was from Anonymous. They have sent me some smart chocolate. Great show so far today, they said. So $5 in smart cash on Bitbacker. I really, really appreciate that. And if you're on Bitbacker and you haven't added an address for every currency that is currently accepted there, I think there are 4 different currencies. There's Litecoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Smart Cash, you're really doing yourself a disservice because there are a lot of awesome things that happen with different ecosystems. So if you're a content creator, be accepting all of them. Just set up a wallet immediately because there are lots of people who want to be supporting people out there who are creating awesome stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for the smart chocolate. I feel smarter and fatter already. Much appreciated, but only virtually
always
fatter.
Makes me smile when people use Smart Cash. That's
I know. It's super easy. It's really, really easy. So
Chris, are you the Smart Cash man? Is that what's going on?
I am the Smart
You're the
Cash
Smart Cash man. I need to talk to you after the show. I need to set up some Smart Cash and get. I would like to know what it's about. Maybe that's
Absolutely.
not for the show.
I'd love to chat with you.
We've done one show on that, Chris, and that was at the there was a Free State event that was on, and it was part of like a longer live stream. One day we should do like a set interview, because I think there are a lot of people who want to know about Smart Cash, especially seeing like platform. There are a lot of platforms out there that accept it now. Bitbacker is just one of them. But there are ways that you can use this, so it would be helpful for people to know what it is.
Exactly.
Great.
All right, well, let's schedule that sometime.
Okay.
Thanks to whoever sent that through. It's anonymous, but as you can see, if you look at the screen right here, you can see it highlighted there. So anyone who sends the power chats, much appreciated. And Google doesn't take 30%. And can I just point out, I just want to mention, so no one sent through a super chat today in Google, right? Which is fine, because Google takes 30%. And
No, they did.
so in the
They
super
sent
chat,
over super chats.
Super chat? No.
In our test stream.
That's what I'm about to say. So no one sent it through. So we, as I mentioned, we started out this show being like, how does this thing work? What's going on? You can I was like, and they're like, what's going on here? And then we got all these people were sending through chats, and we're just like making a whole lot of errors and testing out the network. Now we actually do a valuable show teaching people about crypto news, and there's no one was like, well, that deserves a super chat, but us screwing around did. So that was remarkable. So that goes to show you that next episode, the weekly recap will probably be far less informative and will just be Chris and I not knowing what we're doing. It's what you guys are after. If not, then let us know, because that's the market signals we're getting right now.
The free market will decide.
Free market will decide. But a huge thank you to whoever sent through the Smart Cash. We have run out of time on the show this week, but a huge thank you to you, Blakely, for joining me here from Crypto Insider, and huge thank you to Crypto Insider part of this. It's wonderful to have them as a partner for this show now, just because I mentioned before, they're my go-to resource for all the things happening in crypto. I will be posting links to the articles that we mentioned in today's show, so you can read up if you want to know more about any of the things that we talked about. And Chris, as always, just wonderful having you here. Thank you for taking time out from all of your smart duties and wisdom on the show today.
Happy to be here. It was fun as usual. Educational.
Absolutely. And again, there's this moment now where I'm about to hit stop in the stream. I'm not sure whether that's like a delay and it's going to stop us. So now for the last minute, we're just going to take it up by singing you some songs, because I don't want to cut out any of the actual stuff, whereas if the singing's cut off, it's fine. So I'm not sure how long the delay is. Is there like a timer or something? How do we do this? How do we figure this out, guys? Do I count down from like 10?
What you need to do is put an actual timer on the screen.
I think I can do that too. I have to figure that out.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to figure that out in a future stream. And anyway, you guys, you're awesome. Everyone who's been here in the chat, I love you all. You know I love you all, and I really appreciate you being here. And yeah, see you in the next few streams. I've got some fun ones, perhaps this week even, coming up. So make sure you check those out. And now we start the filler. Let's do a countdown. 10. No, I'll press stop, and then I'll count down from 10. All right, and I'm stopping now.
And this is what I share